with Lizzie Pearl.
Good morning. New South Wales has recorded 38 new cases of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, and 11 of those were in the community for their entire infectious period. Chris O'Keefe joins me on the desk now. Chris, these are incredibly high numbers given we've been in lockdown for nearly 2 weeks.
That's exactly what Gladys Berejiklian said this morning. These numbers are just far too high. Not necessarily the 38 new cases. It's almost 40,000 tests, but it's the fact that there was such a serious chunk of those that were either in the community the entire time during their infectious period or in the community for a portion of that, and that's what's worrying the New South Wales Premier and New South Wales Health. Now, we know that this lockdown has been extended until next Friday, but what they're worried about now is community transmission, not just in where this started, around Bondi in the eastern suburbs, but all the way down to the southwest of the city, around the Fairfield area, Bosley Park, in the Canterbury Bankstown LGA and the Liverpool LGA. Now, given that people down there so far, or in those suburbs so far, have been saying, well, we didn't start this, you know, this came through Bondi, but nonetheless, the question for the New South Wales Health is how do we get the message out to people to stay at home? Because that was the overwhelming theme of this morning's press conference, was that people are picking this up by going and visiting family. So they're not necessarily picking it up in retail settings, they're picking it up by going and visiting family or having family over. Now, strictly, you're not allowed to have any visitors at your home under the current public health orders in New South Wales, but there has been some, I suppose, flexibility around compassionate care, but all of that has changed today around the language that Kerry Chant and Gladys Berejiklian decided to use, and it was all about redefining family and only go over if you absolutely need to. That means taking food or taking medical, giving medical care and things like that, rather than just going over and having lunch and calling that compassionate care. And I think that was the big takeaway, because as we stand right now, lockdown with these numbers, it's going to be a hard call for Gladys Berejiklian to make to lift it on the current schedule.
Please avoid contacts with other households. Please avoid visiting family and friends because you're not allowed to. When we talk about providing care or compassion, we're talking about one person visiting someone who might be isolated, dropping off goods or essential services or providing essential services. We're not talking about visiting extended family members. We're not talking about visiting friends. This is, the data shows in the last few days, that is how the virus is spreading. And the saddest message out of all of that, is that people with the virus are passing it on to those they love most.
And what we're asking people to do is redefine the sense of family. The family unit is the household, people you live directly with.
Now, for businesses who are shut at the moment, there is no further support, but the Premier did say she has spoken to the Prime Minister, and we're due to hear from him at some point today, Lizzie.
Let's hope there's some help on the way. Thanks, Chris. Let's go straight to Lauren Tomasi at Fairfield in Sydney's southwest. Lauren, the Premier foreshadowed a spike in that area, and that's exactly what we've seen.
It is, Lizzie. Of the 38 cases recorded today, 21 were recorded in southwestern Sydney. Those LGAs of Fairfield, Canterbury, Bankstown and Liverpool, really the focus here. We need bigger testing numbers and people to stay at home. It was the message from Dr Kerry Chan and the Premier. People must stop mingling with their families in these areas. Now, there have been a number of new close contact locations released overnight, and that is an evolving list, so you must stay up to date with the New South Wales Health website, but we'll run through those now. There's My Health in Burwood Plaza, the Commonwealth Bank ATMs in Burwood, along with Meat Fish at Burwood. Also Billy's Cars at Revesby and Aldi in Canterbury. As I said, that is an evolving list, so you must stay up to date with the New South Wales Health website. Now, one hurdle faced here in southwest Sydney that mayors and community leaders are facing is that language barrier. It is such a multicultural region here in southwestern Sydney. Our leaders are looking at putting on a community forum to get that message of stay at home and come forward if you do have symptoms. Now, here at the Fairfield Testing Clinic, there is a steady stream of cars coming in, not quite the numbers we'd like to see. I've spoken to health staff here on the ground, and they wanted to reiterate that of the 50 staff here, many of them speak multiple languages, so that's really important in getting that testing message across, and of course to stay at home once you have had that test. Lizzie?
Lauren Tomasi there for us in Fairfield. To Western Australia now, where the Premier has threatened to slam his border shut to New South Wales permanently. Olivia Donaldson joins us live from Perth. Olivia, what has Mark McGowan had to say?
Lizzie, well, Mark McGowan hasn't been too quiet about the fact that he is willing to shut off WA's border with pretty much anywhere else in the country. But right now he is warning that he could lock out New South Wales permanently if the state doesn't get this latest COVID outbreak under control. Now, New South Wales is currently a medium risk state, meaning anyone travelling to WA from there must have an exemption to do so and must also self-isolate for 14 days. Our latest outbreak triggered a 4-day snap lockdown here in Perth only last week after a West Australian was infected in the Bondi cluster before returning home. The Premier says any state with a strategy to coexist with the virus puts WA at risk and he will be forced to put his foot down. Lizzie, Mark McGowan also says that this extra week of lockdown in New South Wales won't be enough to eliminate the virus.
Thanks, Olivia. 2 new local COVID cases have been recorded.